Use your powers for evil.
Your evil is mine.
Hello, and welcome to Next Stop Everywhere, a podcast all about that Time Lord we all love, Doctor Who. I am Jesse Jackson, and joining me, as always, is my podcast partner, my friend from Ohio, Charles Skaggs. Hey, Charles.
Hi, Jesse. How are you today?
I am great. It has been a on and off rainy weekend here in Dallas, but we were, it didn't spoil any plans. I was sharing with you before we recorded. Linda and I binged watched Bloodline, which stars a very uncoached Taylor like Kyle Chandler, but it's really good. But it was perfect. We got finished in time enough for me to pull up my notes and talk to you.
Well, yeah, I'm kind of surprised neither DC nor Marvel has picked him up for a superhero movie yet.
Yeah, he's really good in this, and it's a very different. I really like it. And Glenn Morshire, who I met for a second time, he was at a Dallas convention, and he plays a bad guy in the first season. And he said he's flying down to Miami to film the second season, and he says it's really like nothing he's ever done. And he's, you would know him if you recognize him. He's Agent Pierce from 24, and he's Lance's dad on Friday Night Lights, and he was a general in the Shield. In fact,
So he's got a pretty diverse resume there.
Yes, he does. And what was funny is I asked Tom, I said, what sketch do you think would be good for him to sign? And Tom says, I have an idea. So he drew him in a pink bathrobe.
Yeah.
Opening his closet, and he had all these army uniforms, including a Star Trek,
military uniform.
Military uniform, yes, on the end. So, because he was in, he had done a show, and Tom was like, I would do Next Generation, but that just is a plain black sleeve. But the movie things, have the tunics that you can see.
All right, so Doctor Who.
Yes, and before we talk about Doctor Who, I want to talk about another time with Doctor Who. Did you see the great news about River Song teaming up with the 8th Doctor for a new adventure?
I was going to save that for our news section, but it's up to you. If you want to talk about it now, we can talk about it now. You want to talk about it now?
Yeah, that's fine.
You brought it up. We might as well.
I am just that the idea of Paul McGann and Alex Kingston working together just made me squeal in happiness.
Yeah, there was a ton of Big Finish news.
Right.
From them. They announced 3 new box set series, which is essentially like about 4 stories in one box set. So you get like if you do the CDs like I do,
yes,
you get about 4 of those CDs in one little outer casing box, and you can just burn through. It's like a little mini season.
Yeah.
And so I have the rundown here of the 3 that they announced. So if we can go through that,
please.
All right. As you said, Alex Kingston is returning as River Song, Professor River Song, to Big Finish Audio, because very recently they've just started being able to access the new series material a little bit. They're diving in a little farther now. They're getting a little deeper. So we get River. She's first going to be appearing in January 2016 in her own box set called Doctor Who: The Diary of River Song. And it's going to feature her with the 4 stories where River's out looking for the secret rulers of the universe.
Ooh, nice.
So she'll get to finally meet me. That's great. And here's a bonus: the 8th Doctor, Paul McGann, will be appearing in the final story.
Good.
So which is cool.
Yes.
The second one, River returns. She comes back in a couple months later in Doctor Who Doom Coalition 2. This is a second in a new box set series for the 8th Doctor. So this is like, there's Doom Coalition 1, box set, and then there'll be the Doom Coalition 2 box set. And so you've got the 8th Doctor, his returning companions, Livchenko, played by Nicola Walker, and a new companion, Helen Sinclair, that I guess first appears in Doom Coalition 1. We haven't met her yet, played by Hattie Morahan. And apparently, the premise of this one is that, how can River help the Eighth Doctor, considering she cannot meet him because of, the whole timey-wimey timeline restrictions? Because she first meets the 10th Doctor, so how could she meet the Eighth Doctor, who would presumably create a paradox because, the Doctor would know her before he's actually met her later on in a couple of regenerations later.
Right. Okay. That will be interesting.
So that's the premise of that one. And then the final box set, I'm pretty excited about this one too. It's called Doctor Who Classic Doctors New Monsters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and apparently this is another box set. You got 4 stories, so one CD each. One with the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th Doctors. So you've got Peter Davison, Colin Baker, Sylvester McCoy, Paul McGann, versus new series monsters. So you've got the 5th Doctor versus the Weeping Angels. You've got the 6th Doctor versus the Jadoon. The 7th Doctor versus the Sycorax, which I'm really excited about because I've been wanting the Sycorax back so bad.
Sure.
And you've got the 8th Doctor versus the new series version of the Suntarans. So, which probably means that we'll see the return of Dan Starkey.
Yes.
That one, which would be fantastic. But
Absolutely.
apparently that one is apparently set, according to the Big Finish website, where I referenced all this. That's set on the edge of the Time War. So that sounds intriguing. So I was like,
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah. So some great stuff coming out. That one is date to be determined. But it'll probably be sometime summer 2016, I'm guessing.
And we got a new teaser trailer for the Doctor this week as well.
Yeah, BBC America and release. It's not much. It's just basically, Doctor Who coming back in, this fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, they haven't set the date yet.
No.
But,
so Charles
stuff to go. Just go. Yee!
Yes.
And we'll be switching to obviously weekly.
Yes.
Status.
Charles is on the record thinking it's going to be August. So, and I have no idea.
I'm thinking late August or that first week in September.
Okay, good.
That's my guess.
All right, very nice. So thank you, Charles. I appreciate that. We don't normally do a news segment. That's why I started early. But
well, we haven't had much news lately, apart from like you get the occasional stuff. But this was pretty big news this week from Big Finish. So yeah, if you want to check this stuff out, you can go to bigfinish.com. Or if you're like me, you love the pretty CDs for your collection, you can go to Who North America, WHONA.com, and order them. They're a lot faster than getting them shipped overseas.
Okay, good.
Here in America,
So tonight we are going to talk about we have a cleansing episode.
Yeah.
After our last experience of, and by the way, I went to lunch with Ken Schaefer. So take a drink, everyone.
Take a drink.
And Ken said, I was very confused because when you said that I wanted to borrow his copy of CDs of this serial, he's like, but you and Charles have already talked about it. Why do you need to talk about it? And he was at first confused, and then he realized, oh, no. I said, we had such, and we actually spent a few minutes about the movie saying, it's Peter Cushing. How could it not be good? And his heart was warmed that the only copy of the movie you had was the riff track version. He just said that made him warm and love you even more. He said that was just that was so great of you.
Thanks, Ken, but I'm already taken.
Yes. So yeah, we're going to talk the Dalek invasion of Earth. So this is a first Doctor story,
right?
For the first time.
And we've digressed a little bit. Like we kind of sidetracked with the Big Finish audios and the Peter Cushing movie.
Yeah.
Now we're getting back to actual Doctor Who,
right?
Traditional Doctor Who.
Yeah.
In the classic form, starting with the first Doctor.
To kind of set the stage, this was their second serial of the second season. So this is fairly new in Doctor Who lore.
This is their 10th story overall.
And this was really I've watched a few pieces here and there of the
Mm-hmm.
first Doctor, but this is the first true story I sat down, paid attention to, watched, took notes, and
Right.
actually, enjoyed watching. And spoilers, I did enjoy it. So
Good.
so why don't we start and we'll go from there.
Okay.
First off, I will tell you I enjoyed the show. I
Excellent.
I certainly see, and I've talked about this on most of the classic Who's,
Mm-hmm.
that they're and bloated is the wrong word. It's just a different pacing,
Yes.
and
Fill,
so
a little bit of filler.
yeah.
I'll grant you. There is some filler, but
And that's because they're doing, this is a sixth episode, so they're going through it each time. And
right.
so, but not horrible, just, a little bit. But
Mm-hmm.
overall, I really like the story. And I think it was, I'm going to repeat the story again, but, on the Nerdist Writers, they talked about watching some Quincy Jones or, Barney Miller, where, not Barney Miller, it would have been, the,
Quincy Jones,
yeah, yeah.
music arranger.
So Barnaby Jones, right here. That's what I'm
Barnaby.
excited. Yeah,
There's Quincy
yeah,
with Jack Klugman, and then
yeah,
there's Barnaby Jones. So yeah.
yeah. So so we had the failed Scarecrow on Wizard of Oz because
Right.
Buddy Ebsen had a
Yes.
reaction, but he played this detective, and they talked about that. They showed him pulling up, getting out of the car, shutting the car door, and walking
Mm-hmm.
all the way up the stairs, the
Right.
sidewalk, knocking on the door, and the writer was just saying we'd never waste that much time anymore. I mean, just
No.
the audiences are, and so that's why I think anyone who's going back and watching classic Who, you have
Mm-hmm.
to take a little bit of grain of salt of understand the time. And you
Mm-hmm.
have to forgive whatever pacing and whatever, I mean, the special effects. I think that's a cop out to go, oh, what's so cheesy?
Yep.
From the time being, I mean, classic Star Trek, has horrible special effects, but
Right.
the stories stand up. So I just wanted to throw that in there. I was really happy with this one. So how about you, Charles?
Well, I totally agree with that assessment. This story, now after rewatching it, I'm more convinced of this than ever. Is a very ambitious story, possibly a bit too ambitious for a BBC television budget in 1964.
Okay.
It wants to cover so much in scope and some special effects and stuff, and it just can't quite do it on the little TV budget that Doctor Who had back then, especially before the advance of CGI.
Yeah,
So,
I
that's what
agree.
we get. Like we get like flying saucers that kind of look like
Yeah,
pie plates on a string and stuff like
yeah.
that. But
I,
as long as you're aware of that and take it into consideration, it's like, well, they did as best as they could.
and I also really like the fact they swung for the fences. I
Mm-hmm.
think they tried to tell a grand story.
Right.
And this is going to sound very naive, so forgive me.
Yeah.
The Doctor seemed like the Doctor.
Right.
You know,
As opposed to Peter Cushing.
right. I mean, and I realize that this is the original. So
Mm-hmm.
it's
And
kind of
definite article, you might say.
yes. So it's kind of condescending to say that, because you would figure all the people that go past him,
Mm-hmm.
actually he started the chain. But it was interesting to watch him, and because of all the hoopla and the history on the 50th anniversary and the
Mm-hmm.
TV movie, I had a lot of affection for this first Doctor. Just
Right.
the concept of being first, and you could see the show. They aren't quite sure, like modern era,
Mm-hmm.
the Doctor is the hero.
Right.
On these, they're kind of passing it around. It's more of a I don't want to say a group, but there is different people are sharing part of the burden of it. But he has a little bit of sarcasm. He has a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of arrogance. He's,
Right.
there are things that you go, oh yeah, I see him in the later Doctors, and
Right.
so that was comforting to me and very
Yeah.
satisfying.
Yeah.
Am I overthinking it?
No, you're not. You're pretty much dead on um, because Hartnell was the first Doctor, William Hartnell. He's the innovator. He's the one that's like, okay, we're going forward. We have no idea. We don't have anything to base it on. All the other doctors afterward have his run,
Yeah.
to draw from. But he's the innovator. He has nothing before, so it's just like, okay, we're plowing ahead. Because originally, when the Doctor Who was put together, was it kind of designed to educate children about history.
Right.
But then when they introduced the Daleks, and they're like, everybody like latched on, like, holy crap, this is amazing,
Hmm.
because it like sci-fi, awesome. So they kind of shifted more to the sci-fi route.
Yeah.
And now with this story, the Dalek invasion of Earth, you've got this is the second appearance of the Daleks, written by their creator Terry Nation. So it's adding more fuel to the Dalek mythos. You get some things like, you get the Dalek ship with the little boom 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 boom
Hmm.
boom sound effect. They finally utter their first use of their catchphrase "exterminate" in episode 6.
Yes.
So that was a big moment. So they're able to move around. They're not on like static electricity like they were in their first appearance. And and with William Hartnell, it's great because and maybe you kind of see why I was so like banging the Peter Cushing movie, because it's just so they just totally missed the mark in that Peter Cushing movie, because Ian is much more serious, he's credible, he's a little bit heroic than
Yes.
Barbara and Susan, and so like this is proper Doctor Who
Yeah.
this time, which is
So
kind of why I was excited that we shifted from the TV movie, or I mean the Peter Cushing movie, to this.
yeah, and I'm really glad that we watched it in this order. I don't know if I would have appreciated this episode as much
Mhm.
if I hadn't watched the bid budget movie. So I'm really glad we did this way. Um, Couple questions for you, and
Okay.
we'll kind of discuss the plot, but mostly a lot of times I just want to kind of pick your brain. So what else did
Oh,
Terry Nation, so you said he invented the
yeah,
Daleks. Has he written a
yeah.
lot of Doctor Who? What else would we have known him from?
Well, he wrote Doctor Who through the Third Doctor era.
Okay.
Um, the he, like I mean, he's very mostly he wrote Dalek stories because
Okay.
that was his creation.
Okay.
He wrote some other things, but primarily he's known for the Dalek
Okay.
stories. He wrote other things like the Survivors, the show called The Survivors, which
Okay.
was recently done on BBC America,
Right.
or recently done by the BBC, but also aired on BBC
Yeah.
America. And some like Blake Seven, I believe
Okay.
he's responsible for.
Very nice.
So he's done some other things.
Okay, so when they land in London,
Hmm.
the doctor makes a comment that maybe I've finally gotten you home. We've
Yeah.
kind of taken a long way. So in this, were they embracing the fact? I mean, was the doctor trying to get them back this whole first season? And part of this was that an ongoing kind of storyline that?
Yeah, yeah. Early on, especially like the first few seasons,
Okay,
the Doctor really didn't have control of the TARDIS.
okay,
He would like when they left Earth originally, in An Earthly Child, the first story. Ian and Barbara, like they just wanted to go back home, and the Doctor kept promising trying to get them back home, but of course they would land somewhere else.
okay,
And of course, the Doctor, once they get there, like, oh, I want to go check out what's going on
sure,
and have an
hmm,
adventure.
yeah,
But they always still try to get them back home.
yeah,
So by this story, I mean they've been around a little while together. They're a little bit more of a family
right,
by now, and they finally get back to Earth, and Ian and Barbara are understandably excited
yeah,
until they find out that, like, well, everything's kind of in ruins. Like, you don't hear Big Ben chiming. You've got the Thames River. The River Thames is like poisonous because people
hmm,
have been dumping bodies into it
right.
and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, it's not looking it's looking a little bleak. And
Yeah.
basically you find out in this story that this was V before the series V
Yeah.
20 years later.
Yeah, and in fact, um, Quantum Leap, the credits ended, every week
Hmm.
with,
Oh
Doctor,
boy.
yeah, well, the his final leap is the leap home, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
and then we talked about time tunnel, that the idea that they'd lost in time, and they keep trying to get him back. So this is a common theme.
Hmm.
um, it didn't overpower the episode. I thought it was interesting, and in fact, a candidate for my favorite quote was, "More by good luck than judgment." When he tells, I thought it was interesting seeing the Doctor dusting the console, and you've already done this once, and so I apologize to our audience, but you could see that the Doctor's go-to move of grabbing his coat,
Yes. His
lapels,
lapels.
and
That's his move.
pulling it.
Yeah.
That is his move, and he did that a lot.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting.
Peter
Um,
Capaldi, as a little side note,
yeah,
Peter Capaldi did this exact same move on TV when they announced him as the 10th, 12th Doctor.
right.
When he comes out on stage and he kind of stands there, he grabs his lapel.
Nice.
Lapel's looking in total tribute to Hartnell. I mean,
Okay,
he's an old school fan. He knew what he was doing when he did that,
that's very cool.
and it was very awesome.
Um, so I liked how the Doctor and Ian talked to each other.
Mm.
I don't know if Susan and Barbara were as developed as the Doctor and Ian in the first
Mhm.
episode. I think they each had their own kind of stories to play as this continues. But I
Right.
liked the Doctor and Ian talking about, a bridge falls in the TARDIS, and so
Mhm.
how am I going to get this across? And they talk about what can they do to get it free, and the
Mhm.
brute strength, and that's you so human, and all this different things. So I think they did a good job establishing that the Doctor respects Ian, and Ian
Mhm.
respects the Doctor right away. So, am I
Yeah.
picking up the right things, Charles? Or
Well, at this stage, yes, they do respect each other. Initially, um, the Doctor and Ian didn't get along. Those first couple stories, they're a little bit antagonistic toward one another. The Doctor deliberately will mispronounce Ian's name, like he calls him Chesterfield instead of Chesterton, stuff like that. Just to kind of get under his skin a little bit. Yeah, they have but that friction eventually wears down, and so that
okay?
by now in the 10th story, they get along, which is good.
He doesn't call him PE ever, does he?
No, he doesn't
Okay.
call him PE,
Okay,
but
but that same similar. Okay.
yeah.
Why did the Doctor not like him to begin with, or not respect him?
Well, I mean, initially, Ian and Barbara in An Earthly Child. One of these days, we're gonna have to sit down and we're gonna have to go through that first episode.
Yes, we will
We
do.
don't have to go through the whole story because the whole story is kind of boring, but that
Okay.
first episode is gold.
Okay.
That first part. And Ian and Barbara kind of force themselves into the TARDIS because they're concerned about Susan. They follow her
Right.
back home to the junkyard, the I am Foreman junkyard where he keeps the TARDIS, and they kind of barge in. The Doctor, he's very private. He doesn't, he's very protective of Susan and also their cover. He doesn't want that cover blown.
Right.
So here these come meddling school teachers come waltzing into his junkyard into the TARDIS, and they kind of enough going off on an adventure together back to the prehistoric past. So there's a little bit of friction that the Doctor was stuck with them,
Okay.
but because through that story and then the Daleks,
Yeah.
the first appearance of the Daleks, the second story that they kind of Ian and Barbara kind of prove their worth. I mean, without really saying it.
Yeah.
So he comes to accept them and just
So
like, okay, and then he becomes like, okay, we're traveling together. I guess I'll try and get you home.
so when we and you mentioned this was the second appearance of the Daleks.
Yes.
So based on the TV movie that was for the 50th anniversary, Adventures in Time and
Yeah.
Space, I
Yep.
guess they were hits from the beginning, correct? The Daleks. I mean, when they
Yeah.
showed them,
Yeah.
the
Hmm.
the
Yeah. The
audience
kid. the kids latched on, like every parents were kind of freaking out because their kids were playing Dalek on the playground, trying to exterminate each other, like holding out their hands going exterminate, exterminate, exterminate. And so yeah, it was kind of a Dalek mania. And so they brought the Daleks back. It's just like they proved popular enough to bring them back. And then with this story, then they really took off and became really popular, and that's what helped Doctor Who survive those early years.
So, similar to, from my childhood, when we'd be out on the playground during the winter, you would put your hands out and you would just have the two fingers handing out of the
Playing
sleeve
Sled.
of your jacket. No, and it would be the robot in Lost in Space,
Okay.
Yeah, so you just would see those. It would look like the claws from Lost in Space robot. All
See,
right.
for with me, it was like everybody playing The Greatest American Hero.
Yes. Very nice.
So,
Yeah, very cool.
or Buck Rogers, or
Yes. Yes.
So yeah.
Um, so I thought it was really interesting that and when we get to the second episode, we get the Dalek reveal, and
Yeah.
then I think there's a really good discussion between the head Dalek and the Doctor. And I got to tell you, after all these years, when I hear the word resistance is useless, I immediately go, no, useless is not the word, right? Resistance is futile. Futile.
I was like, nope, sorry, Borg, you ripped off, the Daleks and the Cybermen. They did it first. They did it better. So yeah.
And
so what did you think of that shot in the end of the first episode, the cliffhanger, where the Dalek comes up out of the River Thames?
I think it was really cool. Now
it's like underwater Dalek coming at you.
Now,
coming up onto the bank.
If the name of the serial is the Dalek Invasion of Earth, spoilers, you're expecting to see the Daleks, right? But
well, if you notice though,
yes,
these stories, and I was going to bring this up. At this time, they still had individual episode titles.
World's End was the first one.
Yeah, World's End. They call this one World's End, so you had no idea the Daleks were coming back. So that was a big shock. And then the next episode, after the reveal, they call it the Daleks. But the overall story is called Dalek Invasion of Earth.
I think that was a great, a great cliffhanger. A kind of a sense of dun dun dun, and actually one of the better cliffhangers of these classic episodes we've watched. Sometimes it's just kind of, okay, we're out of time, so we'll throw in something a little fake and now cut. No, this is actually a great reveal, really interesting. Before we move on to talk about that, so on my DVD set, it shows kind of a title card, the spaceship, the saucer flying. Was that how it was done? Is that for the DVD, or is that how it was shown on the TV? Not that you would remember when it was first broadcast, but
just for the record, this came out several years before I was born.
Yes.
So I wasn't, but
through time,
this was 64.
Okay.
The story. So yeah. So obviously I went back in time and watched it. No.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, they had the saucer. That's kind of from I'm not sure which part in the story.
Yeah.
But it's in there.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, I think the Dalek and the Doctor have a good discussion. I love that we are the masters of Earth. We are the masters of Earth. We are the masters of Earth.
And that's the first time they chant that, and that obviously that was another catchphrase that stuck.
So after I watched the episode, I did a little research, and I guess that Terry Nation and the producers deliberately try to put, because remember, 64, World War II, pretty recent. So
it was only 20 years after World War II.
So a lot of Nazi Germany and the Daleks were going for that vibe, which I thought was pretty cool. Not overt, but enough of it that it was very cool.
Yeah, I mean, the Daleks are total fascists, yes, just like the Nazis. So and they're very controlling. They want people to obey them. Yeah. So yes, there's a lot of Nazi overtones with the Daleks, which was intended.
Yeah. I thought it was cool that Ian asked the question, but we destroyed the Daleks. How could they
Yeah.
be here again? And
Yep.
the doctor, and I know this is all exposition, but it was
Mm-hmm.
good exposition of like, no, you got to remember, in this time period, this is happening before, this is
Yeah.
after our timeline, but before in
Yeah.
theirs. And
Right.
very cool. And that we find out this is because they have a round disc on the back. This is the
Mm-hmm.
invasion model.
Yeah, pretty much because in the first story, the Daleks, which was like we talked about with the Peter Cushing movie version, that they could only stay in their city, the Dalek city on Skaro, because they could only travel around by static electricity.
Okay.
But they kind of figured out pretty quickly that, well, if we want them to be popular, we're gonna have to like get rid of that really
Yeah.
quickly. So we developed these discs, and then eventually they got rid of the discs
Yeah.
so that they just travel around anywhere, off-road it, and go
So
anywhere.
when we see the guy, and I'm going to go back in a minute, the guy in
Mhm.
tattered clothes, we had the credits, we had and I think it's cool that the Doctor Who theme and the, kind of the wiggly wobbly,
Yeah,
kind of curvy lines and everything. So when we
yeah,
see the man in tattered clothes with it almost looks like a Cyberman helmet. And you're like,
right.
wait a minute, this is a Dalek
Yeah,
episode. So
yeah. What's with the Cyberman helmet?
yeah,
Yeah,
the Robo Men
but
were a pretty interesting character.
yeah, there was. I mean, they kind of dropped the idea, but they've been used here and there, like in Big Finish audios and stuff like that. So, but generally, yeah, this was just like something the Daleks tried. Like, hey, we've got
Mm,
human slaves, let's control them and turn them into Robo Men, which is just basically like they've got helmets on and we can control them through the helmets.
okay.
So they're like remote controlled slaves.
So I'm gonna turn the bus steering over to you. My
Okay.
next point I want to make is after Flashpoint. So
Yeah.
during the first three episodes, any first three installments, anything you specifically want to ask me about, or any
Right.
story points you want to bring up as we're discussing, as we're kind of
Okay.
jumping all over. I
Yeah, that's all right. I'll try and hit the highlights
Okay.
because but because we've had a lot to talk about, but
Yeah.
um, the let's just say uh, during this, the early episodes, when the team kind of gets split up, and Susan and Barbara end up going off with these freedom fighters, the resistance fighters against the Daleks. One of the people they meet is this guy named David Campbell,
Yeah.
and he's sort of, I guess, good looking for the time. He's kind of handsome, so and the doctor's granddaughter Susan ends up falling for him. They kind of like they go off, and they're kind of kept together through the story so they can kind of get to know each other and interact. And then like they go off into, like, eventually they go off to the countryside,
Right.
and they're kind of rolling around teasing, and wrestling, and then they end up kissing. And of course, just as they kiss, the doctor shows up, and he's like, what's going on here? So
So, not to jump totally ahead, but I
right.
I had a little bit of problem with that. Um, and I hand waved it, but it doesn't feel like they earned that romance. I think I'm nitpicking and I understand,
Mhm.
but it just seems like I'm also thinking of the line with Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock in Speed about
Right.
relationships that happen because of a crisis never last.
Right.
I didn't. I and I'm going to go back to I
Mhm.
understand why Claire and Danny, I see that attraction. I see Danny PE, not only is he
Oh,
good looking,
Clara,
but
Clara,
Claire, yeah,
Clara.
Claire, thank you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I just don't see this with Susan and I'm sorry,
David.
David.
David. Yeah.
So
Well,
and
as a side note,
yeah,
um, this was done, I think, because um, it does seem a little forced, but it's also because the actress Carol Ann Ford
yeah,
wanted to leave. That's why Susan's kind of written out at the end of the episode, or end of
yeah.
the sixth episode. Because she felt that she was very frustrated because she didn't think the writers were developing her character or would allow her to develop the character. They
Yeah,
kind of wanted to get her to be the girl who got in trouble and had to be saved,
sure.
and she wanted more from Susan from that, even then back in 1964.
Yeah.
So you can imagine what it would be like today if she had that kind of role.
Well, yeah.
And so she got frustrated. So I think they kind of came up with this romance idea to kind of give her like, okay, well, we need to write her out. What's the plausible way for her to stay behind where she is?
And of course, being in the early 60s, right? Well, that means she needs to get a man. Uh,
Right, exactly.
I'm not judging. Um,
Or that she just falls in love
yeah.
and like, okay,
Uh,
I got it.
yeah,
But she is torn. She
yes.
does want to stay with her grandfather, so it's not an easy decision for her.
No,
It's not
it's
like,
not.
oh, I love you. I'm going to stay. Bye, grandfather. See you later.
Yeah,
No, it's
and the actress, um,
Caroline Ford.
Karen Ford, I think played the heck out of the what they gave her. I mean,
Hmm.
I don't.
It's not much.
No, it's not much, but it is. And I do think it's a. I certainly, and we'll talk about that as we get to the end, right? I mean, there is a lot of good stuff there,
Hmm.
So okay,
Yeah.
uh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, do you want me to move on to
Yes,
another
please,
thing, or okay?
please.
The another thing that I liked, there was this sequence where I think it was around episode 2, where the Doctor Ian and this guy named Craddock
Hmm.
and some other resistance members are kind of captured by the Daleks and the Robomen, and they're brought aboard the Dalek saucer,
Right.
and Ian kind of is able to, like, or they're thrown in this cell, okay,
Okay.
and there's like this device there, and the doctor, like, this guy named Craddock is just giving the doctor all kinds of crap. He's just laying it on, saying, no, like, what are you trying to do? And the doctor's like, say, I'm trying to get us out of here, dude. Like,
Yeah.
there's this strange box here. I want to figure this out. It looks like it's a key to get us out of here. And he's like, "Oh, you're never gonna figure that out. Oh, you're not. It's nothing." And then the doctor, of course, figures out, because the doctor, and he's
Is
the
the doctor?
awesome, and
Yes.
and and they get out of the cell, and the doctor's like, "See, told you I was gonna figure this out."
Right.
But of course, as soon as they get outside the cell, though, the Daleks recapture the doctor and Craddock. Ian slips out and escapes, but and then they try to convert the doctor into a Robo Man,
Yes.
and so and then he ends up having to be saved, and he's still a little woozy. He's not in much of the action after that for a while. Found out that apparently in episode 3, William Hartnell, during the production, kind of hit his head on one of the cameras or something as he was trying to leave the Dalek saucer or something. So he was kind of out of commission for a little while.
Okay.
So they kind of like gave his lines to other actors, which is
Okay.
why the doctor isn't very active toward the middle much.
Okay. That makes
But then
sense.
he comes back later until he
Okay.
was able to physically recover.
Yep. Since this was my first episode, I wasn't sure what he normally does. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I wasn't
Right.
sure if that was pretty standard. So that was interesting to hear that.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I liked the whole resistance plot
Hmm.
and
Right.
the idea that humans trying to help each other, the whole, and I may be jumping ahead a little bit, but the underground, the
Hmm.
constant searching for food, the idea
Right.
that helping each other and trying to do. I really liked that part of the episode and thought it was well done, and I
Yeah.
think that's why when you said this was ambitious, I agree with you, because on that story, this could
Hmm.
just be, and hey, I'm not criticizing Jurassic World, okay?
Right.
I mean, Jurassic World
But
is there,
I'm waiting for the
yeah, dinosaurs chasing people. That's the
right.
bit. You understand that if you're going to go to a Jurassic movie, the bit is dinosaurs are going to chase people. So,
Yep.
therefore they have to be a little bit foolish. They have to make some poor decisions so that we can
Hmm.
have dinosaurs chasing the people.
Nom
This
nom nom.
could have, yeah,
Yep.
this could have been just fighting the Daleks, but they went for it on
Mm.
how do you trust people?
Right.
Daleks aren't the only thing dangerous on this world.
Hmm.
Humans could be dangerous, and the back and forth. You weren't sure who to trust.
Mhm.
And to bring in another modern show. I don't know if you're watching The Last Ship.
No, but my wife Lori does. So
Okay.
no, I know where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, because at
But
the end of last season,
mhm.
there were two different factions. One that was dirty and
Yeah,
underground, and one was all clean and nice. And spoilers, which one was good and bad? They kind of did a
right.
different thing. So yeah,
Yeah, in general, I really dig resistance revolution type
yeah,
stories. It's probably because I mentioned earlier, the TV show V, the
yes,
original in the '80s, was something I just adored.
yes,
And you have the idea that okay, these aliens come to Earth, they act like oh we're really cool, but then we're kind of Nazi-like, and we're
yes,
taking over gradually.
yeah,
And then you had a bunch of different humans from all these kind of different backgrounds forced to work together against the
yes,
invading aliens.
yes,
And so that premise, and that's kind of what's in this story, the Dalek invasion of Earth.
absolutely,
You've got a whole bunch of different characters that probably wouldn't hang out together normally, but through circumstances they're forced to work together. Some of them may be collaborators. Some of them are looking out for themselves. Like the one guy that was just like, "Hey, you got any money? You can stay here,
yeah,
and if you got some money." So, so yeah, you've got all these people with different agendas, and that makes good drama because
it does,
you're not sure who you can trust,
absolutely,
or if you can trust them, what's going to happen to everybody, and so yeah, just great drama, and you
yeah,
got a cause,
exactly,
so you get to immediately root for the humans for
yes,
survival. Like the movie Independence Day. I mean, that movie had its problems, but it kind of the same thing where you're fighting against an invading force, and so.
absolutely. So, um, uh, cutting forward to Flashpoint and
Mhm.
Ian, who barely loosens his tie. I mean, he keeps his jacket
Well,
on.
he
This,
tries to be very, he's very tries to be very dapper.
yes,
For the most part, he succeeds.
yes, he
His suit
does.
is pretty clean through the most part, but then eventually gets all ripped up down the
Yeah.
back and stuff. But yeah,
Um,
he
and
tries really
yeah,
hard to be cool.
yeah, it was. It just was like, really? I mean, the
Mm.
first thing I used when I wore a tie every day, the first thing I did is pull that sucker off, you know? And so he's just
But
barely got
remember,
it.
British.
British.
Remember
Very
that.
nice. Yeah.
Very that's this that he's got to be dapper. It's all
And
about the British gentleman.
and we get um the statement, the final solution, which is
Hmm.
very much, the fascist Nazi Germany kind of illusion.
Hmm.
I like Jenny and Susan together. I was at first worried that Jenny was going to betray her, and I
Hmm.
didn't trust her a lot, but I ended up liking Jenny. And she wasn't, but she looks a little bit like the actress who was in the Cage pilot, maybe.
Oh yeah, yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah,
Right,
just a little.
It's the original Star Trek pilot.
Yes.
Yeah, the Cage. Yeah.
But I liked her a lot, and I think one of the funniest things
Hmm.
ever was Susan's. Well, we're gonna have an Indian mutiny. It's the same time as the Boston Tea Party.
Oh, that was Barbara.
Barbara, that's what I meant. I'm sorry. Yes, Barbara.
Yeah, that was
Thank you.
that was that. I love that scene too, where she's like trying to stall for time,
Yes.
and she's just trying to oh yeah, yeah, I've got this very important plan to tell you
Right.
about,
General
and
Lee
she's
and the Fifth Cavalry, and then
yep,
Hannibal's gonna come
yep,
over the Alps.
and
Yes.
Hannibal and all this, and
Yes. It
yeah, it's great.
was. Yeah. So sorry,
I love that.
Susan.
I love that scene too.
Yes. So see, Barbara, that's why she stuck with the show longer. She got better
Yep,
things.
you better line. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and it made sense because Barbara was a history professor or history teacher at the
Okay.
Coal Hill School, and Ian was a chemistry teacher.
Okay.
So Ian knows about chemistry, she knows about history, and she's just totally drawing all this stuff up
Yeah.
together just to mess with them because the Daleks don't know Earth history,
No,
so
they don't.
it's actually a pretty good idea.
It was, and I like how they separated the cast and then they got them back together.
Hmm.
I think there was a real sense of dread, as much as you can have in a show that
Everybody survives
Yeah,
generally.
yeah. Unlike
Yeah.
unlike Netflix Daredevil, where
Yeah, it's a little different.
yeah, a little different
But,
era.
but Doctor Who has killed off a few
Yes,
companions.
they have.
So
Absolutely.
it does happen. It's
Yeah.
very rare, but
Right.
it happens.
What other high notes, things do you want to ask me about, or do you want to cover as we move
Uh,
through the story?
I think that, I mean, that's really kind of the big highlights.
Yeah.
Is
I think it was, we had the whole, the Dalek's going to take Earth and make it into a spaceship, and we're going to have,
yeah,
all the
yeah.
different bombs.
That's their big plan, is to take the Earth out of orbit,
Right.
and you just fling it out there.
Yeah.
But obviously that gets prevented.
Yeah. And I thought the whole acid pulling apart the ticking bomb, and the ticking,
Yep.
ticking, everything, it was just really well done.
Hmm.
Um, so buy it or not, Susan is torn, right? So let's talk about the big ending.
Yeah,
She
this is the
loves David,
yeah.
right?
This is I actually really like this ending.
Yes.
I mean, it was a great way to write her out. This
Yes.
is the first. This is important in Doctor Who history. This is the first companion who leaves
Yes.
ever in Doctor Who, and it's a big one because it's the Doctor's own granddaughter.
Absolutely. And in sometimes I have trouble adapting because we have not had an older actor play the Doctor,
Hmm.
again. So you hard to think of him as a grandfather. And even though David Tennant, Matt Smith, Peter Capaldi even are hundreds of years old, you don't think of them as having,
Hmm.
grandchildren and children.
Right.
But I thought it was really nice, and um, she's torn. She's like, "I love you," and
Yeah.
he does a lot with what he has, right? He's like, "I've always grown up on the land. I want to
Hmm.
grow things. I want to make Earth
Right.
bountiful again," which is cool.
and
Um,
and he's like, I want to do that with you.
yes,
And they have this conversation which they had earlier,
yes,
where Susan talks about how she's always traveled from place to place with her grandfather. She's never really had roots of her own, probably because they were living in exile from
right,
Gallifrey. So yeah, she's never lived in one place in one time for very long. So that's why David comes up with this, like, hey, this is what you wanted. This is what you said you wanted. I'm offering it to you. All you
yeah,
have to do is stay.
and I thought that was very touching,
Hmm.
and so we get the famous speech, right? The doctor,
Yes.
you know,
Yep.
lot,
Hmm.
you know,
Saying goodbye to Susan. Yeah.
yes, and this has been shown many times, and I'm going to let you
Mhm.
say it. But go ahead and say it, and then I want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this had to be my quote of the episode because
Right.
it's just so good.
Yes.
And like, I'm not going to go I'm just hitting the highlights because this is like the gist of it, really. He's like, the doctor has locked, just to set this up, the doctor has locked Susan out of the TARDIS for her own good, because he knows that she would give up this chance at a new life for herself with the man she loves because she feels obligated to take care of him. So he deliberately locks her out of the TARDIS,
Right.
and he's saying goodbye to her, and he says, "One day I shall come back. Yes, I shall come back. Until then, there must be no regrets, no tears, no anxieties. Just go forward in all your beliefs and prove to me that I am not mistaken in mine." And that quote, I mean, just it's so powerful. I mean, this is like, just the doctor's first really big, like, we've had the big speeches, like the Pandorica speech, where he's on Stonehenge, the 11th Doctor
Yeah.
shouting out, or we've had moments like that, but this is kind of the first one.
Yeah, and
And
it's
it's
a
and it was so good, they actually took that clip and used it as the beginning, the very opening to the Five Doctors 20th anniversary special
yes.
in 1983. So it's a great speech, and it's one of the highlights that you'll probably see it every so often on Doctor Who tribute videos on
Right.
YouTube, and because it's just a great moment.
Absolutely. And I'm writing. I can't believe you didn't say goodbye in person.
Hmm.
And then David answers that question when he says he knew you could never leave him. And that does kind of explain why they said goodbye via, this wall between them.
Right.
Very touching, very sweet ending. And
Hartnell sells the hell out of that scene.
he does.
And after watching Adventure in Space and Time,
Yeah.
that the actor was very sad that Carol Ann Ford was leaving the show.
Yes.
William Hartnell was very sad. So there's that kind of like probably a little bit of Hartnell's own sadness in the
Yes.
Doctor's words.
I believe
coming
so.
through there. Yeah,
Yeah.
it just comes through so powerfully.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was just so poignant, so sad, yet, it has a beginning,
Yeah.
the idea that she's moving forward. And
And the final shot we get is her taking off her TARDIS key necklace.
Yes.
And leaving it there where the TARDIS dematerialized.
Yes.
Like I'm signifying, like I'm leaving my old life behind to start this new one with David.
Yeah. Just absolutely wonderful. And I will not say that's the only reason this is a good episode. I thought the story was good. I thought, the character interactions, and we've already talked about a lot of things I love. But this really does give you a solid ending. And in ways, this was more poignant to me than the Peter Davison losing the companion.
Right.
Rick, am I getting it?
Adric, yeah. Adric, yeah.
I found this more touching, and I don't know why. Any thoughts? How about you?
Well, Adric's death was pretty much a shock ending.
Right.
I mean, it's just basically everybody standing around going stunned that Adric died.
Yeah.
So we don't really get to the power of it.
Okay.
So there's not really that kind of goodbye scene because everybody expected Adric to, stay alive and not get left behind. But here you have the first Doctor saying goodbye to his granddaughter, and that's just, that's automatically heartbreaking. It's almost like, well, I'll save that for my reverse polarity.
Okay.
segment.
All right. So
that's a little spoilers.
Okay. Yes. So I had two quotes.
Okay.
The first one was when he says, "Oh, damn it, I lost it." Oh,
he says that, really?
Yeah, he does. When Ian says,
I gotta watch that again.
"Sometimes you astound me, Doctor," and the Doctor says, "Only sometimes, dear boy," and I'm like, that is a modern Doctor.
That twinkle in his eye.
Yeah,
that's the first Doctor in a nutshell, there.
That's Matt Smith. That's David Tennant. That's Peter Capaldi. I mean, that is any modern Doctor would say that line.
The Doctor. Yeah.
Yes. And then I love my other one was, "Thank you, but don't call me Doc. I prefer Doc." Yeah. Do you mind?
Right.
And that again.
Well, the line before that was great because it's like, the guy he was talking to, I forget who, he's just like, you're pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And he's like, "You're a pretty amazing guy, Doc."
Yeah. So that was great. So how would you what rating would you give it?
Well, like the other line I had, I mean, obviously I had the "one day I shall come back." I hope I delivered that effectively.
You did it very well.
It's hard to live up to Hartnell. But the other line I liked was when one of the Daleks and the first Doctor are kind of having a little confrontation. And the Dalek is like, "We do not release prisoners. We are the masters of Earth." And the Doctor replies, "Not for long."
Yes. Yeah, that was really good. I agree with you. That was really well done. Good. And the Daleks were really fun in this, and as in they're really bad, and they're evil, and it was good, and there was a sense of dread. So I'm glad you picked this one, and I'm glad we got to watch it.
So what was your rating?
So I gave it 8 miniature chess sets because the guy sitting there with the little bitty, pocket chess set. So I would give it 8 miniature chess sets.
I gave it 8 out of 10 shoes with holes in them.
Because nice.
Because there's a very poignant scene where Susan and the Doctor are having their last face-to-face conversation, and Susan's talking about this hole in her shoe,
Mm.
and the doctor picks it up, and he's like, he kind of takes it, and he's like, "Well, I shall have to mend this, shouldn't I? Or
Yeah.
won't I?" And he's kind of like very sad because I think he kind of knows what's coming,
Yeah.
and he takes the shoe in the TARDIS with him.
Well,
So
and
Susan
yeah.
has no shoe, so she's walking around in a sock, and
So I kind of expected,
yeah,
they did the close up on the necklace. I was
right,
waiting for another shoe to materialize, that he repaired it and then
right,
beamed
and
it
just
down.
left it behind as the TARDIS
Yeah.
rematerialized. That would have been awesome, but
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. Good. Uh,
So now Susan's wandering around like, I gotta find another shoe. He
yeah.
took my shoe.
Damn, grandfather.
Yeah,
So, reverse the polarity.
yeah. Reverse the polarity on this one because we're
Yeah.
going back to the future. Of this one, I'm gonna do uh, the Stolen Earth / Journey's End by Russell T Davies. The episodes 12 and 13 from Series 3 in 2007.
Okay.
Um, this is I'm presuming you've watched this story because it's kind of
Yes.
a big one, where we have like Earth is teleported out of its location along with 26 other worlds, and you find out the Daleks, led by the returning Davros after so many years. Finally the Davros is back, and you've got the Red Supreme Dalek, and they basically quickly they take over the Earth, and they get there's much resistance going on, but still they take it over, and you've got the 10th Doctor and Donna trying to figure out where Earth is, while Captain Jack and Martha Jones, Sarah Jane Smith, Rose Tyler, they're all scattered around trying to survive against the Daleks on Earth. So they're kind of their own little resistance fighters, and which is kind of what made me think of this compared to the Dalek invasion of Earth. And also, like the Dalek invasion of Earth, this story ends in heartbreak when Donna leaves.
Yes. Okay. Good. I
So
now want to
that's
go.
my reason.
I want to go see that. I need to see that episode again.
Yep.
Good. So, first off, by the way, I do have to tell our listeners that
Hmm.
one of the things Charles does is he records in he kind of has a studio. It's the basement of his townhome, and he's surrounded by comic books and DVDs. But on the
Hmm.
shelf right below him, he rotates whatever the subject is. So there is
Yep.
a Dalek and the first Doctor behind him.
Yeah, this one's a black Dalek for
Yes,
describe, and it has the disc on the back.
it does.
So it's got the disc on the back. So it's from the Dalek invasion of Earth.
Yes,
And yes, of course, we've got William Hartnell, the first Doctor. So sadly, no Susan, Ian, or Barbara, but
yes, very nice.
'cause- yeah, how about some more 5 1/4 figures, guys?
Yeah.
Especially like classic Doctor stuff. Come on, get it out there. I'll buy it.
Yeah. So
You're
what are
wasting,
we? Yes. What are
you're
we
wasting
doing
your
next on our
opportunity.
next episode?
Yeah, next we're gonna jump to the second Doctor era, Patrick Troughton era, which we haven't covered yet either. So I'm curious to see Jesse's first real take on the second Doctor. We're doing a story with the second Doctor, Jamie and Zoe. One of my favorites is called The Invasion. No relation to the invasion of Dalek invasion of Earth, but we have the invasion. This is the Cybermen invasion of Earth, essentially,
Okay.
and another great one.
Okay.
Now, two of the episodes, I should mention that two of the episodes haven't been recovered, but on the DVD release, they had some animated episodes
Okay.
because thankfully the audio survives.
Okay.
So what they did is they animated over the existing audio, the original audio. So they kind of basically rebuilt those missing episodes in animated form, and it's a great story.
So we'll talk a little bit more about that our next recording. That is
Mhm.
one of the tragedies of the second Doctor is we do not have as many of his episodes. So we'll talk a little bit
Right.
about that, right?
Thankfully, we've recently gotten a few more. I mean, we
Yeah.
got the Enemy of the World, the Web of Fear. So there's an episode 2 of the Underwater Menace, but unfortunately, the BBC won't release it because they're jerks. And it was supposed to come out on DVD. They canceled the DVD release, and
Uh-huh.
so yes, the BBC video guys are jerks, and they
Okay.
need to release it.
So as we make our way through this summer of No Who, you can reach us at Next Stop SMG, also Next Stop Everywhere SMG at gmail.com. Charles, where can they find you?
They can find me at Charles Skaggs on Twitter and also at Charles Skaggs on Instagram. I'm on the Facebook. I'm on the Google Plus for all you crazy kids on the Google Plus. Shout out to Karen. And there's my blog of geeky things, Damn Good Coffee and Hot, where I talk about things like Doctor Who and all the cool new Big Finish news that we got recently, and all kinds of comics and sci-fi goodness. So I hope you check it out.
So,
And
as a side
go
note,
ahead.
Charles, one of the TV shows that LJ, my lovely bride, and I watch is Major Crimes, which, by the way, Captain Apollo guest starred, and they did have a scene with with the lead, so I was like, look, there's the president talking to Captain Starbuck, Captain Apollo. Anyway, but they said the Facebook, the Twitter, and the
you immediately thought of me.
The
right?
character says you do not have to put the in front of those programs, and I immediately thought of you. So that made me smile in the middle of this detective show. So
you do if you're being ironic, and which I am. So
I am at JWJ170104. I am also on Facebook. I can be heard right now on Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV's Game of Thrones podcast. We are wrapping up. We're doing a couple of episodes past the season, kind of talking about feedback and predictions on the next season. I am doing a Halt and Catch Fire podcast for SMG. So that is kind of fun. Charles, how about you and Karen? What are you guys covering this summer?
Right now, we are also doing the Fandom Zone podcast that I do with Karen Lindsay, who has frequented Next Stop Everywhere.
Yes.
And so we regularly cover comics on television. Right now, we're this coming weekend, we're going to be recording the final episode of Daredevil, season 1. And then we're also covering Birds of Prey. And we'll be coming up with something new in addition to Birds of Prey to talk about after Daredevil ends. So you'll have to come and check us out.
Yes.
We could definitely use the support. So if you're into comics, comic book shows on television, the Phantom Zone podcast is the one for you, especially once September comes around and there's all these comic book shows on television coming back.
Absolutely.
And we're going to talk about them all because we're crazy.
Yes. And Charles and Karen were nice enough to have me on, so we were able to talk about the pilot of Birds of Prey and the 11th
you did a
episode.
Wonderful job, and you're always welcome back.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, so I think it is time to head out. I am going to, as always, thank you, Charles. It is a highlight every week getting to talk Doctor Who with you. And this week I was actually on time, so you didn't have to be all crazy. So
well, you better get used to punctual people because
That's right. So thanks, listeners. Keep it. Go to iTunes, rate and review us. We could use a few more reviews. For now, I'm going to say keep hope alive, and remember, a straight line may be the shortest distance between 2 points, but it is no means the most interesting. And those are words to live by. Thanks, everyone.
Definitely.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.